Boston Celtics have one more move that they are looking to complete before the start of the season, and they're looking to flip one of the recently acquired players. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, the Denver Nuggets find themselves now in a search for a new backup center after Jonas Valančiūnas goes over to Greece, and multiple teams are inquiring on LeBron James. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of Sixth Man Shenanigans, hosted by NBA Central. My name is Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so we got some talk around the Boston Celtics, who we know that they made a number of moves to get underneath that second tax apron, moving Kristaps, Porziņģis, moving Jrue Holiday. They got back into that Anthony Simons, a nice young player that they could look to flip again to get more assets. Georgie Niang as well is another player that they acquired in that, and they've done a pretty good job at dunking the second tax apron, which now puts them in a place to reset the repeater tax, which makes it more penetrative of them. And I murdered that word, but I'm not going to correct it because I don't care. It's Saturday. I don't care. And so now they've used that to kind of reset that repeater tax, which means it's not going to be as big of a penalty for them to pay that when they do eventually go back into that, because they will. And, you know, the Celtics right now, they're going to take a step back next year. Jason Tatum, gone. Jrue Holiday, gone. Well, Jason Tatum's just out with the Achilles tear, but Jrue Holiday and Porziņģis are gone for sure. And they did not necessarily replace those players, the players nearly as good. And so reportedly, the Celtics are still looking to possibly reroute one of these guys, maybe even focusing more so on Anthony Simons to get there to shore up their center position. And that makes some sense. When you look at the Boston Celtics right now and where they are with their center position, it's not very great when it comes down to it. Now, Simons is a player that I do think the Boston Celtics could very well want to take a look at what he looks like on that team, because, you know, at the end of the day, you're still going to need, once Tatum is back and everybody's healthy, you're still going to want to have a team that can go out there and win some basketball games, right? And maybe Anthony Simons, whether he starts or comes off the bench, what he is when he's around another ball handler and he's a volume shooter from three, he can be that secondary ball handler for you. And so I think that seeing what he can look like, maybe even upping his trade value, even if you don't see him as part of your long-term future, he's an expiring contract that you absolutely could look to move at the trade deadline and do something when it comes down to it. So Simons could have a pretty big potential, but I think when you look at it as Peyton Pritchard, he's better in that same role more than likely. So Simons is a very valuable chip for the Boston Celtics. He's an appealing trade target, expiring contract, a young player, volume shooter, can absolutely fill it up at times. And that now sits it right now that the Celtics, who are near clear of the second tax apron, but not exactly all the way clear of it, if they can lose, and this comes from Sam Hauser, who says that they are a candidate to make another trade to trim that when it comes down to it, and try to move off of Niang or Simon to get further under that second tax apron. And that's where it comes in at the positions. When you look at the Boston Celtics and their big man rotation, a lot is left to be desired there. Al Horford, seemingly like he's on his way out. You got Kristaps, Porziņģis, who's gone now. So the Boston Celtics really don't have a solid big man rotation, on top of already losing Jason Tatum, who played a lot of power forward minutes for them. So right now, I mean, Luke Garza's slated to be their starting center as things go on right now. He's slated to be their starting center, with Niang probably slated to be their starting power forward, right? So the big man rotation leaves a lot to be desired. You're not too far off before you get to Sam Hauser needing to play important roles for you if you're the Boston Celtics. So because of that, this is where it seems like it's gonna take for the Boston Celtics to get a little bit more creative and going out there and finding a guy if they can. There's a couple of good targets out there. Nikola Vucevic could be a target from him. He is somebody that was floated around by Brett Siegel as potentially being somebody that the Celtics could look to target if they do decide to flip Anthony Simons. I don't think that trade really makes sense for either team. Vooch on the Celtics for one season does make sense. Anthony Simons on the Chicago Bulls doesn't necessarily make sense, but then again, they're not a very sensible front office, so you never know what's going to happen there for sure. But, you know, they could look to free agent markets. Chris Boucher is still a player that's out there. Trey Lyles is still another player that's out there potentially. But does that do what the Boston Celtics want? Zach Collins, the backup big man for the Chicago Bulls, actually could make some more sense for the Celtics and maybe you get that for a much lesser contract. Now, he is getting paid quite a bit, so you're probably going to want to flip something serious when it comes down to that. You also could look at the Dallas Mavericks, as they have a couple of big men down there that they could be looking to move, especially with their rotation. So there's options out there for the Celtics, but I will not be surprised at all if the Boston Celtics look to flip one of these guys, or maybe even a couple of guys on the roster, to try to go out there and kind of shore up that big man position. I know next year is kind of a flyer year. I've called it a gap year for the Boston Celtics, but I still think that they have enough to compete in the Eastern Conference. Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, even with Jason Tatum being hurt, if you get the right center in here, this is still a team that can compete if they decide to do that. And keep in mind, they also drafted Hugo Gonzalez, which is a player I'm actually very high on at the end of the first round. I think that they did good with that, and Amari Williams as well. And maybe Amari Williams is more ready than people thought at 7 foot, 262 pounds. Maybe the Boston Celtics feel comfortable with running him out there in what is a gap year as well for them. But let me know what you guys think on that. Hearing that the Boston Celtics could still be on the market to flip one of their recently acquired assets to try to get in some more, shore up their big man position a little bit. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, the Denver Nuggets are also a team that now finds themselves trying to find a center. With Jonas Valančiūnas going over to Greece, leaving the NBA, spurning the NBA, which is still crazy enough to just hear how that's going. I guess that's still a crazy thing to do. The Boston Celtics now the Denver Nuggets now find themselves as well looking for a backup center. And, it sucks for the Denver Nuggets, right? The Denver Nuggets have done a really good job, I think, this offseason at restocking their depth. And depth has been a thing that's really hurt the Denver Nuggets since their championship run. They lost KCP, they lost Bruce Bowen, they lost those guys now. One of those guys came back, and shout out to Bruce Brown being back now with that team. This is still a team that needs another backup center. Now, Deron Holmes coming back from an Achilles injury, maybe him now in year 2 can actually give them something at 6'10", 225 pounds. But a big man coming back from an Achilles tear, it usually takes a little while to get that done, right? So you look at the center market out in the NBA. The center market is really dried up when it comes down to it. Al Horford's probably on his way to Golden State. Like I said, before, Day'Ron Sharpe was a guy that I really liked, that I thought teams could take a bite on. He goes back to Brooklyn. So you don't have necessarily the biggest depth there at the free agent centers. There are some there, and I want to be clear that there are some there. Like I said, Chris Boucher is a player that maybe the Denver Nuggets want to take a bite at, especially with having Deron Holmes maybe be able to come back and be able to give you a little bit of something, in year 2, coming back from an Achilles injury. Maybe that's what you look at. But it's clear now that the Boston Celtics, that the Denver Nuggets have a pretty big gap here at what they want to do. I mean, they could take a shot at Isaiah Jackson. He's a restricted free agent. He's coming off a torn Achilles too. Like, do you want to be the all Achilles team? I doubt that. So you can try to find it. They have Zeke Naji, who they can try to dangle to find their backup center as well. If they want to look to make an acquisition more so on the free agent market, they can look to do that. Also, there are some things out there that they can do. I think that them trading Sarg for Jonas Valančiūnas was a really good trade. It sucks the way that that's kind of now shaken out for that team, but Denver has been really focused on shoring up their depth and adding some depth to this team so they can go on a legitimate run. Now, the question is, will they be able to do that enough and find the backup center to replace what they were hoping to get from Jonas Valančiūnas? That remains to be seen, but you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. With that said, last topic that we're going to get into today, LeBron James picked up his $52 million option with the Los Angeles Lakers, and basically since then, it's been a lot of talk around what could happen. The Lakers view him as an expiring contract. Rich Paul was talking about it. He left some room. He said this: "We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage of his career." So even like Rich Paul is leaving it up to, there could be a chance that this could lead to a separation, and that would be crazy to see. And apparently there are a number of teams that are monitoring what's going to happen here with LeBron. And even though he's slated to be a free agent at the end of the year, that may be willing to give up some assets and trade. Now, I think it's going to be very difficult, not impossible. There's no deal that's unmovable in the NBA. I want to be clear there. But I do think it may be a little bit difficult for teams to try to make a trade for LeBron and his $52 million contract and hold on to some of their key pieces. And maybe that's what the Lakers are hoping out for. Like, the Lakers are clearly going in a different path with the acquisition of Luka Doncic. When they went after Luka, with Rich Paul saying he didn't know, LeBron saying he didn't know, I remember a lot of basketball fans were like, you mean to tell me there's no way LeBron known? Well, from the way things have shaken out since then, it seems like he did not know, and Rich Paul basically even saying it as well. But since that acquisition, it's clearly changed where the Lakers are at. And for the first time, it seems like LeBron doesn't have as much control in the organization as what he's used to. And that's just the change of the guard. They have changed directions. They've now have this new piece in Luka Doncic that's given them a new lease on life as far as extending that window, and they have to try to build a roster that makes sense around Luka and keeps them at a place to be able to re-sign Luka when it's all said and done. Will they be able to do that? That's the question that remains here, and we hope so, right? So we'll see what ends up happening here with LeBron. I doubt LeBron's going to get traded. I don't have that feeling. I think there's going to be a lot of talk of this all throughout the season. I think it's going to end up shaking out. LeBron's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, going into the summer of 26. And that's where he's going to make his decision on the next team that he wants to try to win a title with. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. That's my time for today. Real quick Saturday episode. If anything else drops, we'll drop. You guys know how we operate around here. Make sure you guys are following us at Bull Central Pod. Sorry, wrong podcast again. You can follow us at NBA Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBACentralPod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.